of the Daily Maverick and the editor, Mr. Brick, the panel, colleagues on the floor from the media and various sectors of society, ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure and a privilege to engage you today. I apologize that I arrive quite late, well, in time for my speech, but late enough not to be able to follow the rest of the dialogue, which I understand has been a terrific dialogue. I must congratulate the Daily Maverick for organizing this event. It seems to me that it is ideal to talk. Part of the reason we're having a lot of problems in society is we don't talk enough, and I'm grateful that I'm part of this today. I want to engage you very briefly about the state of governance. That's the only area I can comment on with confidence because of the role of my office. In my very brief comments, I'll talk very briefly about what does my office do, and in the course of our work, what have we come across that gives us some insights on the state of governance in our country. Of course, the state of governance has implications for democracy. I'm going to talk about a few areas of work where there are concerns based on the work that we do, from service delivery to individuals, to service delivery to communities. I'll talk briefly about administrative justice. I will also talk about integrity, the levels of integrity within the public sector governance, and make some observations about where we're going and where could we be going as a nation, but also observe on what are we doing right and what could we do to strengthen those things that we're doing right at the level of governance. Now let me just go quickly to the public protector. This office is established to exert accountability in the exercise of state power and control over state resources. Last week, I was in New Zealand with public protectors or ombudsmen from all over the world. I was very happy to be at a conference where every person in the room spoke about the fact that our role was to speak truth to power. The reason I was so happy is because sometimes in our country, there are people who see the word speak truth or the phrase speak truth to power as a swear word, or as a word that is, or as a phrase that is about trying to shame and embarrass those who exercise public power. Previously, I've spoken about this and said, speaking truth to power is an act of friendship. It is not an act of destabilization. In fact, telling lies to those who exercise public power is a destructive act, because when they're headed for a cliff and you tell them it's all rosy, go ahead, you are actually leading them to failure. So it was quite gratifying to engage in that conversation with my colleagues, where everyone thought that a good ombudsman or public protector speaks truth to power. And they do so in the interests of the people that they advise. That would be those who exercise public power. They also do so in the interest of the citizens. But because we've become a global village, you also do so in the interests of the world, because what happens in Tunisia can be felt in South Africa, and what happens in South Africa may be felt in the Sudan. But strictly speaking, the public protector is a constitutional entity established under Section 9 of the Constitution to strengthen democracy through investigating any alleged or suspected improper conduct in state affairs or the public administration at all levels of government, where bad conduct is suspected, not only suspected to be improper and prejudicial. The public protector's role is to make sure that that conduct is investigated, reported on, and the Constitution specifically says take appropriate remedial action. I actually found that in Kenya, the equivalent of a public protector, which is the Public Complaints Commission, has exactly the same constitutional provisions as the public protector. Their act has translated the constitutional provisions into very concrete provisions around what the Commission is supposed to do. But generally, their interpretation is the same as ours, that when the Constitution says take appropriate remedial action, means you mustn't leave the matter unresolved. Once you're not a court of law, you're also not a gate to nowhere. I've indicated that we believe that an ombudsman or a public protector is a friend of the state, and it's an institution that was created by the King of Sweden about 203 years ago. When he came back to his country, his people were angry and rebellious because of excesses in the exercise of state power and control over state resources. And he had seen this entity in Turkey, and he immediately introduced it as a buffer between the state and citizens. It was supposed to be a senior public officer who had to investigate and advise the state on the right way to do business. Basically, the ombudsman is regarded as the voice of the people and the ears of the state and conscience of the state. I don't like the conscience part because it suggests that states don't have consciences. I really do think they have consciences. Now, in this country, we do have a similar institution. It's a Makatsi in the Venda culture. The Makatsi is an aunt. Her job is just to listen to the people and go back to the king and tell the king what you're about to do is wrong or what you did is wrong. And a wise king listens to the Makatsi. Our standard approach to investigations is the same. We look at what happened, what should have happened. We check whether there's a discrepancy between what should have happened and what happened. And if there is a discrepancy, we then determine whether that discrepancy constitutes maladministration. And if there's maladministration, we then have to decide what should happen. That is, how should it be remedied? The second part of our approach is that we fix the problem at hand and then fix the system. So we ensure that a person who has been wronged by the state gets justice. If, for example, you're a rape victim who has been sent from pillar to post and your matter has been postponed 48 times, we will say that's maladministration and we'll say you should be compensated financially. But beyond that, we also would require that the state looks at the system and look at what are the systemic administrative deficiencies that led to that. If you're somebody who's claiming compensation from the Compensation Commission or the Compensation Fund, and it's taken you 4 years to get a compensation, you get your money in a country that has said it wants to have poverty by 2015. We go back to the state and we say, okay, make sure that this person gets his money, but let's find out why did it take 4 years? Because in that 4 years, he may have lost his house, his children may have had to be removed from certain schools and placed in those no-fee schools. He may have lost his wife because in the absence of money, families disintegrate. So we then say to the state, fix the system so that the same should not happen to someone else. That's part of our... We also, as an institution, are driving a change program to turn ourselves into a purpose-driven organization. I have a highly dedicated team, extremely committed. But we always say that if you're not improving, you're dying. Whatever is not growing, it is decaying or dying. So as a team, we're also trying to make sure that we improve the way we understand our business, improve our skills. We seek to ensure that we are always fair, we are always firm and swift. And that's important. And that's important whether you are coming to an office here in Pretoria or you're going to an office in Tata. We're not there yet. Yesterday I was asked by a journalist, how far are we? I said, I think we give ourselves 75%. I don't know what the public gives us, but that's what we give ourselves. Now, our comments on governance then is based on the work we do. Last year, for example, we received 20,000 complaints of maladministration. I must say that those are not reflective of the extent of maladministration in the country. There's far more problems. Recently, when we did the RDP investigation and we went on public hearings, here in Gauteng alone, we received about 2,000 complaints within a space of 2 months. So even though we received 20,000 complaints, we believe there's far more complaints. That means we still need to be more accessible to all persons and communities as required by the Constitution. Most of the complaints that we got reflect service failure in regard to delivery to individuals. These problems would be social security grants under SASSA, the South African Social Service Agency, social housing, particularly the RDP program, but other housing programs are affected as well. The rental program, the rent-to-buy program is also affected. We've just seen in Indonesia a problem there that also, from where we're sitting, reflects problems around regulation. Part of our job is to also look at what we call regulatory failure. Right. Pension benefits is a major problem. And then the compensation fund, workers' compensation, UIF a bit, but over the years UIF has improved tremendously. I must say also SASSA has improved its services tremendously. Municipalities, municipal services, particularly billing and community services, court delays are a major source of complaints to my office. The administration of estates by the Master's Office is a major source of complaints, and the issue of documents by the Department of Home Affairs are some of the areas that we get complaints about on a day-to-day basis. Regarding the area of municipal service delivery, that is an area where people feel extremely uncomfortable because it hits them on a day-to-day basis. And we have found that the key source of unrest, service-related unrest in this country, is service delivery at local government level, just based on the complaints that we're getting. I was going to be in Parliament, for example, next week Tuesday, but at the same time we'd arranged to go to a village, Lehorutse village in Mabat, in Northwest. For us it was just about violence against women. But now I've been told that if I don't show up, there's going to be trouble, because they have systemic service delivery complaints. I've decided that I will not go to Parliament. In any event, I've been told that some people don't want me there, so I've decided to go there. I will send a team to Parliament and I'm going to go to that village where I am definitely wanted. Now, the next area, that takes me to the next area where we work and where we see governance problems. That is service delivery to groups. A lot of complaints that we get are about social housing, water, clean drinking water. We've had a lot here in Gauteng, Centurion, and various parts of Pretoria. Sanitation problems. We also, what we did in Crown Fisherville, Nala, We've also been to other places. Northwest, we also had a place where there's serious problems with sanitation. Some of it is aging old infrastructure, some of it is new infrastructure that is not up to scratch, and then some of it is just lack of sanitation facilities. Regarding social housing, we ended up launching an investigation, a systemic investigation. That's the one I was talking about, where we've launched an investigation that looks at RDP housing, and we've done the public hearings. We received, just as I've indicated, in Gauteng alone, almost 2,000 complaints, and across the country, more than 4,000 complaints within a space of 2 months. That is in addition to the 2,000 complaints we had received in the year 2011-12. We also deal with a lot of problems around land reform, land claims delays. Those are systemic service failures that people complain about. Lastly, the issue of electricity is a major problem. And then in rural areas, the key systemic problem that affects the whole community is the question of infrastructure, roads. In the Eastern Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal, and in the Northern Cape, we were told that there are days that are called no school days. Children don't go to school because when it's raining, they have to choose between the possibility of drowning and going to class. So most parents choose not to send their kids to school, but we also got stories of children that forced their way and braved it and tried to go through the rivers that don't have bridges and died. So that's a key problem in rural areas. In Tsala, in the Eastern Cape, we were told that even taxis don't go there because the roads are terrible. What then happens is children are subjected to minivans. They are bussed into bakkies, and the old battered ones, which are a problem. We were talking to them about the illegal conversion of panel vans into taxis, and they were saying that's the least of our problem. We would be happy to have a panel van that has been converted into a taxi, because we don't have those. We have to get into a bakkie, an old battered bakkie, because people with proper cars don't want to come here because of the state of our roads. Regarding service delivery in the RDP housing, I won't bore you about that because we've told the story many times in terms of our initial observations, what we say, what we saw and what we heard. A whole lot of problem of houses that are not built properly, some structurally defective, meaning that they need to be demolished, and then some with other defects, some too small and not built according to specs. Say the specs would say 40 square meters, and the actual house will end up being 26 square meters. Others built as 4 rooms, but in the end, the person being given a room. The roofs are not up to scratch and they can't withstand storms, meaning then there's also a risk when it comes to disaster management, because a whole lot of these houses can't withstand storms because of the way they are built. We also found there that sometimes people bill for work not done. Say somebody got a contract to build 200 houses. They build 150, they invoice for 200, they get paid for 200. That was a problem for us. We discovered that there were 2 big problems there. One was what they call the People's Housing Project, which is a beautiful idea, except that it didn't take into account that our people are simple, so they can't be the ones project managing the sophisticated contractors. And in the end, we found that the Home Builders Registration Council was not responsible for certification, or the municipalities also were not responsible for final certification. The the end user, who is Grandma Family, who is given the burden of being the one certifying that they got a good house that was built up to specifications, and they would sign what is called a happy letter. But obviously Gogo family would be happy to get any house if they've just moved from a shed. And then only once they're in a house, they realize that the house is leaking and everything is falling apart. Good governance generally, especially in the area of integrity, some of our investigations have shown that there is a serious abuse of state resources. Again, you know about cases that we've dealt with against the rules too, on the point of tenders, it can't be right, and many others. Basically showing that when it comes to procuring services within the state, there hasn't been due diligence as required by prescripts. And in the process, the state has been robbed blind, basically, cheated. Totally, people, firstly, people getting tenders when they shouldn't be getting them, as we said on the point of tenders. A one-month company built companies that had been there for a long time on functionality, and that shouldn't have happened. The state being overcharged. In this particular case, the state being double-billed. I don't want to talk about many other cases. You will ask questions from yourself. We've also, on the question of integrity, we've also dealt with the Executive Ethics Act. We are the sole agency that is given the responsibility to enforce the Executive Ethics Act. One of the disturbing things, though, is that as soon as somebody is reported the matter to the public protector, as required by the law under the Executive Ethics Act, the organ of state involved immediately asks another organ, another integrity institution to investigate. That is worrying for us, because in terms of the law, this is the only institution. Because then it becomes we end up with a duplication of efforts. And also, it worries us about why prefer the other institution. Are there different standards? We've decided that we're going to convene a dialogue within integrity oversight institutions to just discuss this, that we shouldn't be used against each other. But basically on integrity, we've assisted the executive to understand the Executive Ethics Act. Key areas have been around understanding conflict of interest and managing conflict of interest. Some of the cases we've dealt with, there was the cases that involved the then Minister of Communications, and previous cases have included the Minister of Minerals and the Minister of Environmental Affairs. We've also now dealt with ministers having to understand the threshold for the benefits and not to take things beyond the benefits that are given to them by the handbook, what is called the Ministerial Handbook. One of the cases we dealt with in this regard is a case called In the Extreme, where a minister really took far more than he was allowed by the handbook. We have others that we have dealt with and others that we're still to deal with. We just want to indicate, though, that we shouldn't paint the entire public service in the same color. There are serious difficulties in the public service. There are serious difficulties when it comes to governance. From my side and my team, we are willing to help government, and that's our job. Our job is to speak truth to power. But we believe that from government side, what is important is that government should say what it means around issues of ethical governance. And government should mean what it says. If government says what it means and means what it says, that would mean that when we investigate, we will get full collaboration when we investigate, and when we make findings, there will be no difficulty with implementation. Also, we not get people maligning us in public, or maligning you in public, and claiming that you support some or other party, but not being able to provide you with evidence of that. Because from our side, the reports are very transparent. So if you want to say there are logical inconsistencies in the report, you should be able to say that. But you can't accuse me of being biased without pointing specific provisions in my report that don't make sense. Basically, that's the global requirement, that the Ombudsman must be illogical or irrational for a court of law to review that decision. What is the state of governance? I think I'll agree with those that say we are in serious trouble. We need to look very carefully in the mirror. And where are the mirrors? Mirrors are institutions such as the Public Protector, the Auditor General, the Public Service Commission, the Special Investigation Unit, the Hawks, the Human Rights Commission. When they say to government things are not right, we all need to work together to fix those things. Denying it and trying to vilify the institution instead is not going to help us, because we're headed for a cliff if we do that. A lot of the maladministration processes or infractions do erode democratic processes. And that's not surprising. The Public Protector is one of the institutions supporting and strengthening constitutional democracy. So it is clear then that the framers of our constitution knew that maladministration would undermine democracy. So if we want to strengthen constitutional democracy, we should all be alert to maladministration, especially when it is systemic, especially when it involves systematic ill treatment of people. I know everyone worries about corruption. And I do worry about corruption, but I want us also to worry about treating people badly. Because a whole lot of those people that are taken to the streets today are worried about corruption, but the real reason they're worried is because they've been treated badly. They've been denied services that they are entitled to. So there's an erosion of democratic processes. There's an erosion of public confidence in the state. What also concerns us, though, is an erosion of public confidence in institutions supporting democracy when their decisions are not implemented. The Auditor General has complained about some of his decisions being not implemented. In my case, most of the decisions are implemented, but the few that are not implemented are worrying, because they can erode public confidence. And the consequences for the families affected, we really don't want to know about those. There are warning signs of possible public uprisings that could be similar to the Arab Spring. We're not there yet. So where do we go from here? We need to make sure that members of the executive, people in government, understand primarily the issue of conflict of interest. And they're making a decision to look at a decision that best serves the interest of the people and less of their own self-interest. That is a requirement of Section 96 of the Constitution. There's a need for better responsiveness to the people and adherence to Batubili principles. Administrative justice is the core of the work of an ombudsman, that is the Public Protector. It's important that every civil servant understands the principles of administrative justice. When people seek services from government, they're not begging. There's a constitution that guarantees them those services. There are laws that guarantee them those services. So it's important that people are treated well, and therefore that strengthens constitutional democracy and the rule of law. We also believe that the exercise of ethical leadership and generally ethical governance is important. That includes administrative justice, but it also includes ethical conduct in terms of how people use public resources. It also includes avoiding corruption. I must just indicate that When it comes to the issue of public resources, these resources are limited, and in the context now of the economic challenges globally and here in the region, it is even more important that we take the limited resources and we use them with the interest of the majority of our people in mind. I recall that under the President Mandela, there was a two-pronged approach to development. There was a basic needs approach and a global competitiveness approach. From our observations, we feel that we are weak on the basic needs approach. That's why in some communities still have schools that are mud schools. They still have schools that don't have facilities such as laboratories and computers. And we still have children that have no school days because there are no roads and there are no bridges. I want to end my brief talk with some words of wisdom that came from President Nelson Mandela when the International Ombudsman Institute met here in South Africa in 1996. He said the following: "We are mindful from the very start of the importance of accountability to democracy. Our experience has made us acutely aware of the possible dangers of a government that is neither transparent nor accountable. To this end, our Constitution contains several mechanisms to ensure that government will not be part of the problem, but part of the solution." Thank you.